The slap echoed through the boutique like a gunshot. Sharp and final, silencing the hum of New York City's evening crowd. Elias Kane stood frozen, his cheeks stinging, the taste of copper in his mouth as he stared into the store manager's smug face. He hadn't expected this, not here. Not now. Not in a place he'd built from nothing. Elias was no stranger to judgment. At 35, he'd faced enough sneers and whispers to armor his heart. But this was different. The manager, a wiry man named Greg with a cheap suit and a cheaper attitude, had crossed a line. Elias had only been browsing, his fingers grazing the silk of a tailored jacket, when Greg's voice cut through the air. "We don't serve your kind here." He'd spat, loud enough for every shopper to hear. Elias had turned, stunned, his boyfriend Theo at his side, gripping his hand. Before Elias could respond, Greg's hand swung, connecting with a crack that sent gasps rippling through the crowd. Theo's reaction was instant. "You don't get to touch him," he shouted, stepping between Elias and Greg, his 28-year-old frame taut with fury. His dark eyes blazed, and for a moment, Elias thought Theo might hit back. But Elias placed a hand on Theo's arm, steadying him. This wasn't the time. Not yet. Elias Kane wasn't just any shopper. He was the elusive owner of Kane Couture, the fashion empire that owned this very boutique and 100 others across the globe. Few knew his face. He preferred it that way, letting his designs speak louder than his name. But today, anonymity had cost him. Greg, oblivious, sneered again. "Get out before I call security." Elias's jaw tightened, but his voice was calm, almost too calm. "You'll regret this." He turned, guiding Theo toward the door, their hands still clasped. The crowd parted, some whispering, others staring in pity or disgust. Outside, the Manhattan evening buzzed with life taxis honking, lights flashing, but Elias felt the weight of every eye that had witnessed his humiliation. Theo's voice broke the silence as they stepped onto the sidewalk. "Why didn't you say something? You could have ended him right there." His tone was raw, protective, laced with the kind of love that made Elias's chest ache. "Because," Elias said, his hazel eyes catching the city's glow, "I don't fight with words. I fight with power." They walked toward their car, parked a block away, the city's pulse thrumming around them. Elias's mind was already racing. Greg had no idea who he'd just struck, but he'd learned soon enough. Elias had built Kane Couture from a single sewing machine in a Brooklyn apartment to a global brand. Not by playing small, but by playing smart. This wasn't just about a slop hit, it was about every door slammed in his face, every slur hurled his way, every moment he'd been told he didn't belong. Back at their penthouse overlooking Central Park, Elias sat at his desk, the city skyline glittering beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. Theo paced, still fuming. "You can't let this go, Elias. That guy humiliated you in front of everyone." "I'm not letting it go," Elias replied, his fingers tapping his laptop. He pulled up the boutique's employee records, finding Greg's file in seconds. Gregory T. Walsh, store manager, hired 6 months ago. No prior incidents, but a string of customer complaints about his attitude. Elias leaned back, his mind calculating. "He's done, Theo. But I'm not firing him. Not yet." Theo stopped pacing, his brow furrowing. "What's the plan?" Elias's lips curved into a faint smile, the kind that promised trouble. "I'm going to make him face me in my terms." The next morning, Elias called a meeting with his executive team. Kane Couture's headquarters, a sleek glass tower in Midtown, hummed with energy. His team knew him as a visionary, private but relentless, a man who turned fabric into art and prejudice into opportunity. He didn't mention the slap, only that he'd be visiting the boutique again, this time as the owner. "I want a full audit of that store," he told his CFO, Maria. "Every sale, every complaint, every detail." Maria nodded, sensing the edge in his voice. "Anything specific we're looking for?" "Everything," Elias said. "Especially the manager." Theo insisted on coming along, his loyalty unwavering. "I'm not letting you face that jerk alone," he said, his voice softer now, tinged with worry. Elias didn't argue. Theo's presence grounded him, a reminder of why he fought not just for himself, but for them, for the life they'd built together against all odds. By noon, Elias was back at the boutique, this time in a tailored Kane Couture suit that screamed authority. Theo stood beside him, his casual jeans and leather jacket a contrast to Elias's polished look. The store was quieter today, but Greg was there, behind the counter, oblivious to the storm approaching. Elias's heart pounded, not with fear, but with purpose. He wasn't here to play victim. He was here to reclaim his power. "Mr. Walsh," Elias said, his voice cutting through the store's soft jazz. Greg looked up, his smirk fading as he registered Elias's presence. "We need to talk." Greg's eyes narrowed, recognition dawning but not quite landing. "You again. I told you to get lost." Elias stepped closer, his gaze unflinching. "You don't know who I am, do you?" The air thickened, the other employees glancing nervously. Theo's hand brushed Elias's, a silent anchor. This was the moment Greg would learn the cost of his actions. Greg's sneer held, but a flicker of unease crossed his face. "I don't care who you think you are," he said, crossing his arms. "This is my store, and you're not welcome." Elias's smile was razor sharp, the kind that cut deeper than words. "Your store?" He let the question hang, savoring the moment. "That's an interesting assumption." He pulled out his phone, opened an email from Maria, and slid it across the counter. The screen displayed the boutique's ownership records, with Elias Kane's name in bold. Greg's eyes darted to the screen, then back to Elias. His bravado cracked, but he doubled down. "This is fake. You're nobody." Theo stepped forward, his voice low and dangerous. "Read it again, Greg. Carefully." The other employees were watching now, their whispers growing louder. A young cashier, barely 20, clutched a stack of receipts, her eyes wide. Elias raised a hand, silencing the room. "I'm Elias Kane," he said, his voice steady but resonant. "I own Kane Couture. This store, this brand, every thread in this building gets mine." The color drained from Greg's face. He opened his mouth, but no words came. Elias didn't need them. The truth was sinking in, heavy and inescapable. "You assaulted me yesterday," Elias continued, "in front of my customers, my employees, and my partner. You thought you could judge me, humiliate me, because of who I am. You were wrong." Greg stammered. "Two didn't know? I thought. You thought I was just some guy you could push around." Elias cut in. "You thought my identity made me less. But you don't get to decide my worth. Not here. Not ever." Theo's hand tightened around Elias's, a quiet gesture of solidarity. The crowd was silent, the weight of the moment pressing down on everyone. Elias wasn't just confronting Greg, was confronting every moment he'd been made to feel small. Every time he'd had to prove he belonged. "I could fire you right now," Elias said, his voice softening but no less firm. "But that's too easy. I want you to understand what you've done. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to keep your job for now. But you're going to work under me. Directly. You'll see what it takes to run this empire. And you'll learn what respect means." Greg's jaw dropped. "You're keeping me?" "For now," Elias repeated. "Prove you're worth keeping." The rest of the day was a blur of activity. Elias stayed at the boutique, meeting with employees, reviewing sales data, and observing Greg, who moved like a man under a microscope. Theo stayed close, his presence a steady anchor. By evening, Elias had a plan not just for Greg, but for the entire store. He wanted to make it a beacon of inclusivity, a place where no one would ever feel the sting of rejection he'd felt. That night, back at the penthouse, Theo sat on the couch, pulling Elias close. "You were incredible today," he said, his voice warm. "But are you sure about keeping Greg? He doesn't deserve it." Elias sighed, resting his head against Theo's shoulder. "It's not about what he deserves. It's about what's right. If I fire him, he learns nothing. If I keep him, maybe he changes. Maybe he sees the world differently." Theo's lips brushed Elias's forehead. "You're too good for this world. You know that." Elias laughed softly, the tension easing from his shoulders. "Not too good. Just stubborn." The next week was a test. Elias visited the boutique daily, working alongside the staff, teaching Greg the intricacies of the business he'd so carelessly disrespected. Greg was quiet, almost robotic, but Elias caught glimpses of something else: confusion, maybe even shame. It wasn't enough. Not yet. But it was a start. Meanwhile, word of the incident spread. Customers whispered about the slap heard round Cane Couture, and social media buzzed with speculation. Elias stayed silent, letting the story grow. He knew the power of a narrative, how it could shift perceptions, spark change. He wasn't just running a fashion empire, he was shaping a legacy. By the end of the week, Elias called another meeting, this time with the boutique's entire staff. He stood at the front, Theo by his side, and spoke from the heart. "This store isn't just about clothes," he said. "It's about people. It's about creating a space where everyone belongs, no matter who they are or who they love. We're going to do better. Starting now." The staff nodded, some tearing up, others clapping. Greg stood in the back, his face unreadable. Elias didn't need his approval, not yet, but he needed his attention. The boutique transformed over the next month. Elias poured resources into staff training, focusing on inclusivity and empathy. He brought in experts to lead workshops, ensuring every employee understood the weight of their actions. Greg attended every session, silent but present, his defiance softening into something closer to curiosity. Elias watched him closely, searching for signs of genuine change. Theo, meanwhile, took on a role of his own. A photographer by trade, he proposed a campaign to showcase Cane Couture's commitment to diversity. "Let's tell real stories," he said one night, sketching ideas on a napkin. "Customers, employees, people like us, let's show the world who this brand is for." Elias loved the idea. He greenlit the campaign, and Theo threw himself into it, photographing people from all walks of life, different identities, backgrounds, and stories. The images were raw, powerful, each one paired with a quote about what fashion meant to them. One photo featured a young trans woman in a cane couture gown, her smile defiant. Another showed an older gay couple, hands clasped, wearing tailored suits. The campaign, dubbed "Wear Your Truth," went viral, flooding social media with support. But not everyone was on board. A small but vocal group of customers loyal to the brand's older, more conservative image pushed back. Online comments called the campaign woke propaganda, and a few threatened to boycott. Elias expected this. He'd faced resistance before, when he'd first launched cane couture with designs that challenged gender norms. He wasn't afraid of a fight. One morning, a protest formed outside the boutique. A dozen people held signs reading, "Keep fashion traditional," and chanted slogans. Elias stood at the window, watching, his stomach tight. Theo joined him, his hand slipping into Elias's. "They don't get it," Theo said quietly. "They don't get you." "They don't have to," Elias replied. "But they'll learn." He stepped outside, facing the crowd. The chants faltered as he raised a hand. "I built this company for everyone," he said, his voice carrying over the noise. "If you don't like that, you're free to shop somewhere else. But this is my house, and everyone's welcome here." Some protesters jeered, but others lowered their signs, caught off guard by his calm resolve. A few passers-by clapped, and soon, a small countergroup formed, cheering Elias on. Theo captured the moment on his camera, the image later becoming the centerpiece of the campaign's symbol of defiance and unity. Inside, Greg approached Elias after the crowd dispersed. "That was bold," he said, his tone hesitant. It was the first time he'd spoken to Elias directly since the slap. "Bold is what built this empire," Elias replied. "You'd do well to remember that." Greg nodded, his eyes dropping to the floor. Elias didn't trust him yet, but he saw potential a crack in the armor of prejudice. He'd keep pushing, not for Greg's sake, but for the principle. The campaign's success brought new challenges. Sales soared, but so did scrutiny. Reporters hounded Elias for interviews, wanting the story behind the slap. He declined most, letting "Wear Your Truth" speak for itself. But one journalist, a woman named Clara from a major fashion magazine, got through. She met Elias and Theo at a quiet cafe. Her questions sharp but fair. "Why keep Greg?" she asked. After what he did, most CEOs would have fired him on the spot. Elias sipped his coffee, considering. Firing him would have been justice, he said. But keeping him is progress. If he can change, maybe others can too. Clara's article ran the next week, titled "The Empire of Empathy." It praised Elias's vision, his resilience, and his refusal to let hate define him. It also mentioned Theo, calling him the heart behind cane couture's soul. Theo blushed when he read it, but Elias just kissed him, whispering, "They're not wrong." As the campaign grew, so did Elias's ambitions. He began planning a new line, one that would push boundaries even further, gender-neutral designs, bold colors, pieces that celebrated individuality. He worked late into the night, sketching, while Theo edited photos beside him. Their penthouse became a creative hub, filled with laughter, debates, and quiet moments of love. But the past wasn't done with them. One evening, Elias received an email from an anonymous source. It contained a photo of Greg, taken years ago, at a rally for a known hate group. The message was simple: your manager has a history. What will you do? Elias stared at the screen, his heart sinking. Theo leaned over, his face hardening as he saw the photo. He's been lying to you, Theo said. He's not changing. He's just playing along. Elias didn't respond. He needed time. Time to think. Time to decide. Greg's past was a shadow, but Elias had built his empire on second chances. The question was, did Greg deserve one? Elias didn't sleep that night. The photo of Greg at the rally burned in his mind. A grainy image of a younger man holding a sign that made Elias's stomach churn. He sat at his desk, the city's lights flickering outside, and wrestled with his instincts. Part of him wanted to confront Greg, to demand answers. Another part, the part that had clawed its way from a small-town kid to a fashion mogul, urged caution. He'd learned long ago that people could change, but only if they faced their truths head-on. Theo was less conflicted. He's dangerous, Elias, he said over breakfast, his voice tight. You're giving him a chance he doesn't deserve. What if he hurts someone else? Elias pushed his coffee aside, his eyes tired but resolute. If I fire him now, he walks away with his hate intact. If I keep him, I can force him to confront it. I need to know if he's capable of more. Theo shook his head. Frustration etched into his features. You're risking too much for someone who doesn't care. Elias reached for Theo's hand, his touch gentle. I'm not doing this for him. I'm doing it for us, for everyone who's ever been slapped, shamed, or shut out. If I can change one mind, it's worth it. Theo's expression softened, but the worry didn't leave his eyes. Just be careful. Okay. Elias nodded, but the weight of the decision pressed harder. He scheduled a private meeting with Greg, away from the boutique, at a quiet office in Kane Couture's headquarters. When Greg arrived, he looked nervous, his usual bravado replaced by a fidgety unease. Elias didn't waste time. He slid the printed photo across the desk, watching Greg's face. Explain this, Elias said, his voice steady but cold. Greg's eyes widened, his hands trembling as he picked up the photo. This was years ago. I was young, stupid. I didn't know better. You held a sign calling people like me an abomination, Elias said, his words cutting like glass. You stood with people who wanted me erased. Was that just stupid too? Greg's face crumpled, and for the first time, Elias saw something like shame. I'm not that person anymore, Greg said, his voice barely above a whisper. I was raised in a place where that's all I knew. I left it behind. I swear. Elias leaned back, studying him. Why should I believe you? You slapped me, Greg. You humiliated me in my own store. That's not ancient historiethats last month. Greg's eyes dropped to the floor. I panicked. I saw you and him, and it brought up old stuff. Stuff I thought I'd buried. I was wrong, and I'm sorry. The apology hung in the air, fragile and untested. Elias didn't trust it not yet, but he saw an opening. You're on probation, he said. One more mistake, and you're gone. But you're going to prove you mean this. You're going to work with the inclusivity team, attend every workshop, and meet with community leaders. You're going to listen, not talk. Understand? Greg nodded, his face pale. Yes, sir. Elias dismissed him, but the meeting left him unsettled. He wanted to believe in redemption. But doubt gnawed at him. Theo's warning echoed. Had he misjudged Greg? Was he risking too much? The boutique continued to thrive. They Wear Your Truth campaign drawing global attention. Elias and Theo attended a launch event for the new gender-neutral line. A glittering affair in a Manhattan ballroom. Models of all identities strutted down the runway. Their outfits bold and unapologetic. Theo's photos lined the walls, each one a testament to the campaign's message. The crowd roared with approval. But Elias's mind was elsewhere, replaying Greg's words, searching for truth in them. After the event, a young employee named Mia approached Elias. She was the cashier from the day of the slap, her eyes bright but nervous. "Can I talk to you?" she asked. They stepped into a quiet corner. Theo nearby, ever watchful. Mia took a breath. "I saw what happened that day. I've been wanting to say something. But Greg's been different lately. He's been asking questions, listening to the workshops. I think he's trying." Elias raised an eyebrow. "Trying how?" "He's been talking to customers differently," Mia said. "He helped a non-binary customer last week. Spent an hour finding them the perfect outfit. He didn't have to, but he did." Elias exchanged a glance with Theo, who looked skeptical but intrigued. "Thanks, Mia," Elias said. "I'll keep that in mind." As they left the event, Theo slipped his arm around Elias's waist. "You're really giving this guy a shot, aren't you?" Elias sighed, the city's lights reflecting in his eyes. "I have to believe people can change, Theo. If I don't, what's the point of all this?" Theo didn't answer, but his grip tightened, a silent promise to stand by Elias no matter what. The weeks that followed were a delicate balance. Elias kept Greg on a tight leash, assigning him to work directly with the inclusivity team. Greg attended meetings with community leaders, sat through hours of training, and even shadowed Mia, who'd become an unexpected ally in his transformation. Elias monitored his progress through reports, but he also watched Greg in person, searching for sincerity. One afternoon, Elias overheard Greg helping a young gay couple in the boutique. They were nervous, unsure if they'd be welcomed, but Greg's tone was warm, patient. He recommended outfits, made them laugh, and sent them off smiling. Elias stood in the shadows, a mix of surprise and cautious hope stirring in his chest. Theo wasn't as convinced. "One good day doesn't erase his past," he said that evening, chopping vegetables for dinner in their penthouse kitchen. "People like him don't change overnight." Elias stirred a pot of sauce, his mind turning. No one's asking for overnight. But if he's trying, I have to give him room to prove it. Theo set the knife down, his eyes searching Elias's. "You're risking your reputation. If he screws up again, it's on you." Elias nodded, the weight of that truth heavy. "I know, but I've taken bigger risks." The campaign continued to soar, with Wear Your Truth inspiring copycats across the fashion industry. Elias was invited to speak at a major industry conference in Los Angeles, a chance to share his vision on a global stage. He brought Theo, who documented the trip with his camera, capturing candid moments of Elias preparing, laughing, and stealing quiet kisses in hotel hallways. At the conference, Elias took the stage, his voice steady but passionate. "Fashion isn't just about clothes," he said to a packed auditorium. "It's about identity, about telling the world who you are." At King Couture, we're building a space where everyone can do that without fear, without shame. The crowd erupted in applause. But not everyone was moved. A heckler shouted from the back, "Stick to fashion, not politics." Elias didn't flinch. "This isn't politics," he replied, his voice cutting through the noise. "This is humanity." The moment went viral, shared across social media with hashtags like King Couture and Wear Your Truth. Elias's inbox flooded with messages support from fans, criticism from detractors, and requests for partnerships. But one email stood out, from a nonprofit working with LGBTQ+ youth. They wanted to collaborate on a mentorship program, using Kane Couture's platform to empower young people. Elias replied immediately, his heart racing with possibility. Back in New York, the boutique faced a new challenge. A competitor, Luxe Trend, launched a rival campaign, accusing Kane Couture of exploiting diversity for profit. The claim stung, especially because Elias knew how personal this fight was. He called an emergency meeting with his PR team, determined to counter the narrative. "We don't respond with anger," Elias told them. "We respond with truth. Let's invite Luxe Trend to join our mentorship program. If they're serious about their values, they'll show up." The move was bold, and it worked. Luxe Trend backed off, and the mentorship program gained traction, with Elias and Theo personally meeting with the first group of mentees, young people who'd faced rejection, bullying, and worse. One teen, a shy boy named Luca, reminded Elias of himself at that age, quiet, creative, but afraid to shine. Elias spent hours talking to him, sharing his own story, from the slap to the empire he'd built. "You're stronger than you know," Elias told Luca. "Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Luca's eyes glistened, and Theo, watching from across the room, gave Elias a look that said, "Everything I am proud of you." But the peace was short-lived. Late one night, Elias got a call from Mia. Her voice was shaky. "It's Greg. He's in trouble. He got into an argument with a customer. And it's bad." Elias's heart sank. He grabbed his coat, Theo already by his side. "What happened?" he asked as they rushed to the boutique. Mia met them at the door, her face pale. The customer was harassing a queer couple. Greg stepped in, but it escalated, the guys threatening to sue. Elias found Greg in the back, his face bruised, his hands shaking. For the first time, Elias saw not just shame, but fear. "I was trying to do the right thing," Greg said, his voice breaking. "I couldn't let that guy talk to them like that." Elias exchanged a glance with Theo, who looked stunned. Was this the change they'd been waiting for? Or was it another mistake? Elias stood in the boutique's backroom, the fluorescent lights casting harsh shadows on Greg's bruised face. The air was thick with tension, the faint hum of the store's music barely audible. Theo leaned against the wall, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. "Tell me exactly what happened," Elias said, his voice calm but firm. Greg took a shaky breath. "This guy, big, loud, drunk, came in with his buddies. They started mocking a couple trying on jackets, calling them names, getting in their faces. I told them to stop, but he shoved me, said I was one of them for defending them. I pushed back. He swung." Elias glanced at Mia, who nodded. "It's true," she said. Greg was protecting them. The couple was scared, but they're okay now. They left before the cops showed up. "Cops?" Theo cut in, his voice sharp. "They're outside," Mia said. "The guy's pressing charges. says Greg assaulted him first. Elias's mind raced. This was a mess of public relations nightmare. A legal tangle. And a test of everything he'd been trying to build. He turned to Greg. You did the right thing stepping in. But pushing back. That's where you lost control. Greg's shoulders slumped. I know. I saw red. I kept thinking about what I did to you. And I couldn't let it happen again. The admission hit Elias hard. For the first time, Greg's words felt raw. Unfiltered, not an excuse, but a confession. Theo's expression softened. Just a fraction. But he stayed silent. Elias stepped outside to face the police. The customer, a burly man with a red face, was shouting about lawsuits. His friends egging him on. Elias's presence quieted them. I'm Elias Kane, owner of Kane Couture, he said, his voice cutting through the chaos. Let's talk. The officers explained the situation. The customer claimed Greg attacked him unprovoked. Witnesses, including Mia and other employees, backed Greg's story, but the couple had left, leaving gaps in the evidence. Elias promised to cooperate, providing security footage and employee statements. The customer stormed off, still threatening to sue, but the police let Greg go with a warning. Back inside, Elias sat Greg down. You're not off the hook, he said. You need to learn control. But you stood up for someone today. That matters. Greg nodded, his eyes red. I'm trying. Mr. Kane. I really am. Theo pulled Elias aside as they left the boutique. I didn't expect that, he admitted. He took a punch for someone. Maybe he's not hopeless. Elias smiled faintly. Maybe. The incident made headlines, but not the way Elias feared. The media latched onto Greg's defense of the couple, framing it as a redemption story, where your truth gained even more traction, with customers flooding the boutique to show support. Elias used the momentum to announce the mentorship program's first event, a fashion workshop for LGBTQ+ youth, led by himself and Theo. The workshop was a success. Luca, the shy teen, opened up, sketching designs that stunned Elias with their creativity. Other mints shared stories of rejection and resilience, their voices weaving a tapestry of hope. Elias felt a surge of pride not just in them, but in the empire he'd built, a place where they could belong. But the legal threat loomed. The customer's lawyer sent a demand letter, claiming assault and emotional distress. Elias's legal team advised settling, but Elias refused. We fight this, he said. Not just for Greg, but for what it means. We don't bow to bullies. Theo, usually the cautious one, agreed. Let's take him down. They hired a top attorney, digging into the customer's history. They found a pattern: similar complaints at other businesses, all dropped when money was offered. It was a hustle, and Elias wasn't playing. He also reached out to the couple from the incident, who agreed to testify. Their story matched Greg's, painting him as a protector, not an aggressor. As the case built, Elias noticed a change in Greg. He was quieter, more thoughtful, often staying late to help with the mentorship program. One day, he approached Elias with a sketch of simple jacket design, inspired by the campaign. I thought, maybe it could be part of the new line, Greg said, his voice hesitant. Elias studied the sketch, surprised by its quality. Not bad, he said. Keep working on it. Greg's face lit up, a spark of pride Elias hadn't seen before. It was a small moment, but it felt like progress. The lawsuit loomed like a storm cloud, but Elias refused to let it derail his mission. He threw himself into the mentorship program, spending weekends with the teens, teaching them design, business, and resilience. Lucas' sketches became a highlight, his bold lines and vibrant colors catching the eye of Kane Couture's creative team. Elias saw potential in him not just as a designer, but as a leader. Theo was there every step, capturing the teens' progress in photos that told stories of growth and courage. One evening, as they reviewed the images, Theo paused on a shot of Luca, his face lit with a rare smile. "This is why we do this," Theo said, his voice soft. "You're giving them what we never had." Elias leaned into him, their shoulders brushing. "We're giving them what we fought for." Greg's transformation continued, slow but steady. He became a fixture at the mentorship workshops, helping with logistics and even sharing his own story with the teens. One day, he spoke about the slap, his voice shaking as he admitted his shame. "I was wrong," he told them. "I hurt someone who didn't deserve it. I'm trying to be better." The teens listened, some skeptical, others moved. Luca, ever quiet, asked, "How do you know you've changed?" Greg hesitated, then said, "When you start caring about people you used to hate. It's not easy, but it's real." Elias, watching from the back, felt a knot loosen in his chest. He still didn't fully trust Greg, but he believed in the possibility of change. Theo, standing beside him, whispered, "Okay, maybe he's not a lost cause." The legal battle heated up. The customer's lawyer pushed for a quick settlement, but Elias's team uncovered more dirt, a history of frivolous lawsuits, and a rap sheet for public intoxication. The couple's testimony, combined with security footage, painted a clear picture. Greg had acted in defense, not aggression. The case was shaky, but it wasn't over. Elias decided to go public. He wrote an open letter, published on Kane Couture's website, and shared across social media. "This isn't just about one incident," he wrote. "It's about standing up to hate, in all its forms. We're fighting this lawsuit not for profit, but for principle. At Kane Couture, we believe everyone deserves respect." The letter went viral, sparking a wave of support. Customers flooded the boutique, buying pieces from the new line and sharing their own stories of facing prejudice. The mentorship program grew, with more teens joining, inspired by Elias's stand. But the fight took a toll. Elias worked late nights, juggling the lawsuit, the business, and the mentorship program. Theo noticed the strain, pulling him aside one evening. "You're carrying too much," he said, his hands cupping Elias's face. "Let me help." "You already are," Elias said, kissing him softly. "You're my anchor." Theo smiled, but his eyes were serious. "Then let me be your shield too. You don't have to fight every battle alone." Elias nodded, grateful for the reminder. They decided to host a charity gala to fund the mentorship program, turning the lawsuit's spotlight into something positive. The event was set for the boutique, a bold statement of resilience. Theo designed the invitations, each one featuring a photo from the campaign, while Elias planned a runway show to showcase the teens' designs, including Lucas. Greg volunteered to help, organizing logistics with a quiet efficiency that surprised Elias. The night of the gala, the boutique glittered with lights, music, and hope. Guests included industry leaders, activists, and the teens' families. Lucas' jacket, a bold mix of leather and silk, stole the show, earning a standing ovation. As Elias took the stage to speak, he looked out at the crowd, Theo beaming, Luca blushing, Greg working in the background. "This is more than a store," he said. "It's a movement. It's about building a world where no one is slapped down for who they are." The applause was deafening, but Elias's eyes locked on Theo's, a silent promise passing between them. They'd faced hate, fought for love, and built something unbreakable. But the night wasn't over. As the gala wound down, Elias got a call from his lawyer. The customer had dropped the lawsuit, citing personal reasons. Elias knew better. The evidence had been too strong, the public support too overwhelming. They'd won the lawsuits and felt like a weight lifted. But Elias knew the real work was just beginning. The gala had raised enough to expand the mentorship program nationwide, and Luca's designs were picked up for a limited Kane Couture release. The teen's quiet pride was a reminder of why Elias had fought so hard, not for revenge, but for possibility. Greg's role in the gala hadn't gone unnoticed. He'd worked tirelessly, earning quiet respect from the staff. Elias called him into his office the next day, the same room where he'd confronted him about the rally photo. This time, the air was different, less tense, more open. "You've come a long way," Elias said, leaning back in his chair. "But I need to know, why are you still here? You could have walked away." Greg met his gaze, something steady in his eyes. "Because I was wrong. About you. About a lot of things. Working here, seeing what you've built, it's made me want to be better. Not just for me, but for people like those kids." Elias studied him, searching for any trace of deceit. He found none. "You're off probation," he said finally. "But you're not done learning. None of us are." Greg nodded, a faint smile breaking through. "Thank you, Mr. Kane, for the chance." As Greg left, Theo slipped into the office, his camera slung over his shoulder. "You're really keeping him on, huh?" Elias smiled, pulling Theo close. "I'm keeping him accountable. There's a difference." The mentorship program grew, with new chapters opening in Chicago, Miami, and San Francisco. Elias and Theo traveled to each, meeting teens, sharing stories, and building a network of hope. The Wear Your Truth campaign became a global movement, inspiring other brands to follow suit. Kane Couture's sales skyrocketed. But for Elias, the real victory was in the lives they touched. One evening, back in New York, Elias and Theo walked through Central Park, the city's lights twinkling around them. The air was crisp, the leaves crunching underfoot. Theo stopped, pulling Elias into a kiss under a street lamp. "You did it," he said. "You turned pain into something beautiful." "We did it," Elias corrected, his voice soft. "You were with me every step." Theo grinned, his eyes bright. "Always will be." They stood there, wrapped in each other, the world fading away. Elias thought of the slap, the sting of it, the shame. It had been a spark, igniting a fire that burned through hate and built something stronger. He'd faced down prejudice, not with fists, but with love, resilience, and a refusal to be silenced. The boutique became a symbol of that fight. Customers came not just for clothes, but for the story, a place where a slap had sparked a revolution. Greg stayed on, rising to a regional trainer role, teaching inclusivity to new hires. Luca joined Kane Couture's design team as an intern, his sketches already shaping the next season. Elias and Theo continued to build. Their love the foundation of it all. They faced challenges, new critics, new battles, but they faced them together, unyielding. The empire Elias had built wasn't just about fashion. It was about dignity, about proving that no one could slap down who you are. As they walked home, hand in hand, Elias felt a quiet certainty. The world wasn't perfect, but it was changing. And he'd keep fighting. One stitch, one story, one heart at a time.